Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a brand new Shadow Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Shadow PIDGEOT. With the Team Go Rocket event just releasing, they released a couple new Shadows, and to me, Shadow PIDGEOT definitely looks to be the most intriguing. Today, I'll be testing it out with Legacy Wing Attack, Aerial Ace, and Brave Bird. Aerial Ace compared to Feather Dance does give Pidgeot a much cheaper charge attack, and since it's the Shadow Pidgeot, the Aerial Ace is actually going to do some pretty nice damage. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's see the world debut of Shadow Pidgeot in the Great League. Hopping into the first match, leading Annihilate into Whiscash. I'm going to farm up 6 counters, switch into the Dugong, and catch the Scald. So this way, I can save a bunch of energy on my Annihilate and waste the energy from the Whiscash. And my opponent is actually not switching out here. They're staying in this matchup and firing off energy. That definitely works for me. They go for a second Scald, so the fact that they're going for debuffs, they're staying in, it feels like they are very weak to Dugong in the back. Definitely feeling that they might have some kind of a dragon back there. I've been seeing a lot of Guzzlord, a lot of Goodra, and a lot of Dragonair. My opponent will be able to make yet another Mud Bomb, but due to the debuffs, I will barely be able to hang on and make one final Icy Wind. This will be enough to knock out unless they commit the shield. Opponent does not make a play for switch advantage. They send in Venusaur. I can send in Shadow Pidgeot in the back. It's the Guzzlord. In comes Annihilate, and the opponent resigns the match. Moving into the next match, we now lead into a Shadow Whiscash. Same game plan as before. I'm just going to be catching the Scald onto the Dugong. The Scald will do quite a bit more damage than it did in the previous game because Shadow Whiscash, the damage is no joke. This thing hits incredibly hard. My opponent will go for the Mud Bomb. That does a lot of damage. They're now going to send in a Skarmory. I definitely needed to bait out the Skarmory because Shadow Pidgeot, of course, would get absolutely destroyed here. But if my opponent can actually get a Steel Wing farm down, this gets extremely uncomfortable. Second Icy Wind is going to connect. This is going to be close. Oh, my opponent decides to throw a charge attack. It would have been close. In hindsight, I think they might have been able to get the farm down, but it would have been really close either way. I can bring back in the Annihilate, I have stored energy, and win the charge attack priority tie with my Night Slash. They shield, so I'm more than happy to shield back and fully counter all the way down. My opponent is not going to let that happen. Back in comes the Shadow Whiscash, and Whiscash will go for the Mud Bomb. I can survive this. I'm going to farm up 4 counters, switch into the Shadow Pidgeot, and catch the Mud Bomb where it is going to be double resisted. So now I'll have energy everywhere. I get a farm down on the Pidgeot. I have so much energy on the Annihilate, and we already know the Skarmory is extremely low. What is that final Pokemon? It's their own Pidgeot, but theirs is not going to be the Shadow. They throw on 6, so this is going to be an Aerial Ace. I am going to be committing the shield. I have a massive amount of energy here. I decide to go for the Aerial Ace bait. It's a bit risky, but they do shield. I'll make it to the Brave Bird, but there's the catch from the opponent. Catching the Shadow Brave Bird, even with 0 bubbles, it still knocks out. In comes my opponent's Pidgeot. They will overfarm and fire off the Aerial Ace. But the good news for me is I have so much energy on the Annihilate, so I can click Close Combat. Close Combat knocks Pidgeot out of the sky, and we're able to take the win. Tough lead in the next match, leading Annihilate into Shadow Feraligatr. I'm going to save switch into Dugong, and my opponent is going to actually stay in this matchup. This works out pretty nicely for me. I'm more than happy to play this out with the Dugong. They're staying, so I'm just going to fire off the Drill Run. This does not come close to KOing, but it will deal some very valuable damage, and I'm still not quite in a range where Hydro Cannon can knock out. They'll go for the Hydro. I believe at this range, even an Icy Wind would knock out, so I may as well go for the move that can get a debuff if they shield, and they do end up shielding. So now their attack is debuffed. I can send in the Annihilate, and I feel less bad about no shielding a Hydro Cannon here. Don't get me wrong, that still does a lot of damage. They have Gligar. I'm going to send in Pidgeot, and I am up a shield, which is good, but this definitely could get a bit interesting. I'm looking to overfarm, and you know what? I'm full sending it. Going straight for the Shadow Brave Bird. Shadow Brave Bird picks up the KO. What do they have in back? They have a Whiscash, and I should be in the driver's seat of this match. I am going to be baiting here with the Aerial Ace. Opponent calls it, but even an Aerial Ace bait does a lot of damage to the Shadow Whiscash. That's one thing that I was really liking about the Pidgeot when playing with it here in these games, is this thing just, even with the Aerial Ace, just hits very hard. And now I get the catch onto the Annihilate. Opponent is going to be able to pick up the knockout, but I can just send back in the Pidgeot, make it to the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace easily going to be knocking out the Whiscash and securing the win. We see a tough lead in the next match. Annihilate into the Shadow Nidoqueen. I safe switch into the Dugong, and my opponent is going to respond with Umbreon. I probably should mention the first game was in Go Battle League, but unfortunately my elo is sitting in the high 2800s right now, so queue time's very, very extensive at the moment, and it's kind of hard to get consistent battles. So after it took a while to get that one game, for the rest of these battles, these are going to be viewer battles with members of my Discord, so that way we still get to see it in action without me having to sit in queue for like 3 hours to get 10 battles done. So from the first battle, as I mentioned, in Go Battle League, and the rest will be some practice footage. So they send in Umbreon. I overfarm and I decide to go for a Drill Run. Drill Run doesn't knock out here. It does do slightly more damage. In hindsight, I should have just gone for the Icy Wind, because Icy Wind, of course, would allow me to better withstand this damage. But as it turns out, Dugong barely able to hang on with a fraction of HP and win alignment. Are they going to send back in the Nidoqueen? No, they are not. They send in a Shadow Sableye. Sableye's definitely had an uptick in popularity as of late. And Shadow Pidgeot, definitely a pretty good spot to be in here, as the Shadow Aerial Aces here, Shadow on Shadow, are going to do so much damage. Just off wing attacks, I already have this thing at half HP. I do want to commit a shield, as I really do not want to accidentally no-shield a Power Gem. Aerial Ace is going to be shielded, and as long as I match shields, I should be able to overfarm slightly and be in a very good spot. There it is, they full send the Power Gem, in comes the Nidoqueen, but I'm able to make it to the Brave Bird. This is going to be goodbye to the Nidoqueen. Shadow Brave Bird just hits so hard. They send back in the Sableye. I switch into the Annihilate at the last possible second. They fire off the Foul Play. That does a lot of damage, but Annihilate gets to flip the script a little bit on Sableye and take the victory by countering down. Very, very terrible lead in the next match, as I lead Annihilate into Gligar. I save switch Dugong, my opponent sends in Poliwrath, and this is just looking like the team that I have been running. Typically, it's the Shadow Gligar, the Shadow Poliwrath, and an Annihilate in the back with close combat. And if that's the case, then I'm probably in trouble here, because that Gligar actually stayed in, took a couple Ice Shards, and got a couple Wing Attacks, and that's actually going to work in my opponent's favor here, because they're going to have an energy advantage versus the Pidgeot, and we have identical pacing, because we both use the same Vast Attack, Wing Attack, and the same Flying type Charge Attack in the Aerial Ace. So I will get a 1 Wing Attack head start here on the Pidgeot, but I'm always going to be down energy. Like, they already have the Aerial Ace ready to go, and this is honestly not looking terrific because I'm down energy. I'm going to overfarm quite a bit and play to the CMP tie with the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace does get shielded up by my opponent, and I think whether they shield my next move or not, I don't really see a path forward to win this game, because I don't have Shadow Ball on my Annihilate. And if they are running my team, then I would really need Shadow Ball to try and win it. They let it go, and it is going to be the Annihilate. And Annihilate should just be able to counter down before I make another Aerial Ace, so they can very safely commit a shield. I'm going to farm up to bluff like I have the Shadow Ball, but I definitely do not. My opponent, they actually do have the Shadow Ball, so that is going to pick up the knockout. Pidgeot is going to get countered down. So Pidgeot did his best to 1v2 in the end game, but unfortunately came just short. Great lead in the next match, leading Annihilate into Dugong. The save switch into the Goodra, and I am going to respond with a Dugong of my own. Power Whip does a ton of damage here. I no-shielded one of these, and my opponent was almost able to flip switch, so I am definitely going to be shielding that up. They're more than happy to just let this go, and I basically have a full health Dugong. So I'm going to be able to apply a lot of pressure onto my opponent here, just in terms of whittling away at their HP more and more. And if I can potentially get them into a range where 1 counter or 2 counters can KO, then I might potentially consider aggressively switching out of here if I can get them low enough to just try and get rid of the Dugong. Because my guess is they're probably going to try and exit with energy that they can use to threaten the Annihilate. I mean, Annihilate doesn't get knocked out by a single move here anyway. Oh, they actually let me get to the Drill Run. This, I think, will come very close to knocking out, so they do commit the shield. And from here, I got the shield back, so I am ecstatic. This went perfectly. I can send in the Annihilate, and Annihilate does not have to shield. They're going to have to switch. They baited out the Dugong. What is the final Pokemon? And it is Dragonair, and this is just a win. I can go for the close combat to force the final shield, and then send in the Shadow Pidgeot. Pidgeot is going to need to commit a shield, as Body Slam definitely going to be doing quite a lot of damage from a Shadow Dragonair, and then I can go for the Aerial Ace. And this is a nice thing about having the Aerial Ace over the Feather Dance, is Aerial Ace actually knocks out here, so I don't have to go for a Brave Bird. I can just wing attack down the Dugong and take the game. Picking up a positive lead in the next match, Annihilate versus Lickitung. I'm going to look to overfarm opponent. Oh, they try and go for a close combat catch, but I throw an extra counter and I'm able to fire off the Night Slash. They respect the potential double nuke Annihilate, but I am just running Night Slash in close combat, and now I can send in Pidgeot. Night Slash will add up. That does quite a lot of damage. I will go for the Aerial Ace before they're able to make Night Slash number 2. Aerial Ace will be no-shielded. Down goes Annihilate. In comes the Gligar, but Gligar is now going to be met with a Shadow Brave Bird. They have to shield this. As that, honestly, I haven't seen a Shadow Brave Bird land, but that has to come real close to just one-shotting from full health. Unfortunately for my opponent, it's just a completely RPS game. Like, the game is decided on alignment, where my Annihilate is into their Lickitung, and unfortunately the Gligar is just getting crushed by double super effective damage from the Dugong. So they can send back in the Lickitung just to get close combated. Gligar going to attempt to farm down, but it's just not quite able to get there, as Night Slash will pick up the KO. We get a win, and we get the 2 shield flex as well. Another great lead in the next match. Annihilate into Registeel. Opponent save switches into Goodra. I'm going to farm up energy. I try and go for an Aqua Tail catch. I'm unsuccessful. And I believe this one was actually played before the first Goodra game, because I no-shield the Power Whip, and I'm like, wait, that did way too much damage. I was not expecting it to do that much damage to a Dugong. They're going to shield the Icy Wind, and I'm thinking, I think they might be able to flip switch, but they throw the move at the last possible second, so I commit the shield. The Ice Shard KOs, and by the narrowest of margins, I keep switch advantage. They can send in the Registeel. I do have a draw run loaded. Realistically, this draw run isn't going to matter a whole lot, because my main damage is still going to be from the close combat. So I send in the Annihilate, choose to overfarm quite a bit, and close combat will just cleanly KO from this range. Opponent is going to let it go. In the back, oh no, and it's just another game that's just completely hard counter, where they were able to bait out the Dugong, but now Giratina gets completely walled by the Shadow Pidgeot. Honestly, double resisted Shadow Ball did respectable damage, but I can just full send the Brave Bird. Opponent knows that it's over, and they are going to let that through. Hopping into the final match, we see a very positive lead. Annihilate into Poliwrath. Opponent save switches into Skeledirge, and this is a bit of a problem. I go into the Pidgeot, but Pidgeot is taking so much damage from these Incinerates. It's actually a crunch Skeledirge, which is definitely a surprise. And I'm going to return fire with the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace will be shielded up. I'm able to make Aerial Ace number 2. They know that this can't be the Brave Bird, so we might see the no shield here. They are going to let that through. And you know what? I think I have to go down shields. I do need to keep switch advantage. Thankfully, the crunches do not get the debuff, and I get the farm down. Back in comes the Poliwrath. Poliwrath unable to get the farm down as Shadow Pidgeot makes the Brave Bird. This will command a shield or fully one-shot, so they're forced to commit the shield. And I can send in the Annihilate. Annihilate going for the close combat, winning charge attack priority over the Poliwrath. Close combat, picks up the KO. In the back, it's Mantine, and this is just game over. There's not really a whole lot Mantine can do. This battler mentioned after the fact that they're actually running Bubble Beam and Ice Beam on their Mantine, which is a moveset that I have run before previously when I just didn't have any charge TMs, and I was trying to switch my Mantine moveset, and I ended up on Double Beam. And I was like, you know what? I guess I just am a Double Beam player now. I just play Bubble Beam and Ice Beam. And they mentioned that they didn't want to extend the match any longer, because even if they Bubble Beam, they're unable to flip this. So they end up just going for the Ice Beams, and I'm able to take that farm down and win the game. All in all, Shadow Pidgeot looks very promising in The Sims, and I really feel like it delivers. I don't think it's a top meta threat for the Open Grade League, but I think it's a very viable anti-meta Pokemon. The role of a normal flyer has definitely been absent for a couple seasons since the fall of Noctowl, and we do see a lot of teams that are like Lickitung plus a fighter. We see Glygars as well, so having a Pokemon that can actually output some damage into those type of cores is honestly quite nice. So I do think that we are going to see, if people are going to be using Pidgeot, people are going to be using the Shadow with the Aerial Ace, because that pacing on Aerial Ace to straight 5 is very, very nice, and the ability to go for Brave Bird shields down is very nice as well. Skarmory and Gligar definitely remain the top 2 meta flyers, but I think there's definitely a niche out there, an anti-meta niche for the Shadow Pidgeot, especially because we know that Lickitung Sage Switch is absolutely everywhere. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.